headache because of this division, because I have to talk to the fans of these NFL teams in the NFC East, try to explain to me why each and every single one of these teams has a shot to win this division, and we are overall just overthinking this. It is simple, and I'm going to tell you why, because this is my NFL Divisions prediction show, where I go through every single NFL division, and I give you a prediction for it. It's pretty simple. You see it in the title, you see it in the previous episodes if you are a recurring subscriber. And if you're not, hit the sub button. It's simple as that. We're going right through this intro because I am tired, and you know what? I'm not just tired. I'm drained trying to explain to people why the Commanders are not a sleeper team, the Giants are still not a good football team, the Cowboys are much worse than they were in previous years, and the Eagles could be the biggest boom or bust team in the entire NFL. And then, look, you know what? Let's hit the intro. Let's get right into it, and I'm going to explain to you why the Giants are the 4th place team in the NFC East. I also completely forgot to mention that we will do the last place team first and the first place team last, but I think you could pretty much assume that I was going to start with the first place team because the Giants are far from it. I like what they did this offseason. Giants fans, do not come for my head, but at the core, when you are switching a coach for the, God knows how many times the Giants have done that over the past 5 years since Tom Coughlin was still the head coach. When you are switching into a whole new regime, I do not believe in Daniel Jones. I don't see the upside. I don't see the vision that people want me to see. When we talk about Daniel Jones, now I'm not going to give him a bunch of strays like I'm Colin Cowherd. If you want to go watch that, you can go watch that. I think Daniel Jones is a fine quarterback. But when you are in a rebuild, he is not a difference maker. He is probably the closest thing to a bridge quarterback right now. And he's probably on the bottom tier of bridge quarterbacks. I would take Jared Goff. I would probably take, I don't know, Kirk Cousins. I would take Matt Ryan. I would even take Tua. And I've been one to say that I'm not a huge Tua guy, but at least Tua has some elite traits unlike Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones coming out of college was not a gunslinger. He wasn't showing elite arm talent. And when you pick him as high as number 6 in the NFL draft, he has to have some sort of elite traits, right? And I didn't see that. The most elite trait I've seen is he's a really good read option quarterback, which no one really expected for him to have the wheels that he does unless he's tripping on the 5-yard line after running 90 yards. And also, on top of that, I am very concerned about Saquon Barkley. I want Barkley to be a great running back once again, but injuries have hindered that, and I think this is the first time he's been healthy in the past couple years, but he still is not under a great offensive line. And let's be honest, Brian Daboll didn't bring the best out of running backs in Buffalo. But I think that Brian Daboll was a good head coach. You had to go with an offensive guy. I think that was the bottom line, and that's why I wanted a lot of teams that had head coaching opportunities to go with an offensive-minded head coach. And I'm looking specifically at you, Chicago, but that's neither here or there. I think the Giants also have a lot of interesting pieces on the wide receiving core. Wan'Dale Robinson out of Kentucky seems really interesting. Kadarius Toney seems like one of the shiftiest players in the NFL, point blank period. And Kenny Golladay is probably one of the biggest free agent busts over the past 10 years. And on the defensive side of the ball, let's switch it up, right? You have Leonard Williams still on the team, who I think is a really damn good defensive lineman. Xavier McKinney's one of the most underrated safeties in the entire NFL. The cornerback room, there's a lot to be desired after they lose James Bradberry, and they gave him the massive contract, and he underperformed, but I think he's going to do a lot better in another NFC East team that I'll get to in a minute. The linebacking core is a little interesting, and then I loved and absolutely loved the Kayvon Thibodeau pick. I think Kayvon Thibodeau has the biggest upside as an edge rusher, and I think he could be one of the best edge rushers that the Giants have had over the past 10 years. And that is, at its core, a rebuilding team. You are basing everything, when you are trying to tell me that what's going to put you over the top is going to be a bunch of rookies like Evan Neal, let's say Kayvon Thibodeau breaks out. Like, those two guys are what's going to put you over, when at your core, you still have a below average, like very below average quarterback play, who is going into an offense that isn't really suited for him because he doesn't have the Josh Allen elite arm talent. Now, I know that's a lot to ask, but let's just say Brian Daboll wasn't the guy that picked Daniel Jones, and nor was the general manager that just came in. I wouldn't be surprised if Tyrod Taylor started some snaps this year. Saquon has been injury prone, but I still think he has some upside, but history wouldn't bode well for a Brian Daboll-led offense. I think Devin Singletary is a good running back and much better than, or much not as good as Saquon Barkley. Let me get my words right. So maybe I'm just missing a part of the Daboll offense, but they did not run the ball a ton. They passed a lot. And I think a guy like Kadarius Toney, who is already having some off-field issues or potential trade requests after being on the team for 1 year. I think that they're in the midst of trying to build a culture, and you're not going to be able to turn that in 1 year, especially with a below average quarterback. We see it with Joe Burrow coming into a below average environment with the Bengals and be able to turn that around because he is just that special of a talent. Daniel Jones is not that. I'm not here to slander Daniel Jones the entire time, but here's the thing. He's not a good quarterback. I would not be surprised if they try to go get like Anthony Richardson next year, Will Levis, Tyler Van Dyke. And I don't expect him to be like in that CJ Stroud, Bryce Young range, but I expect him to try to get a guy like Anthony Richardson who has a lot more upside. And they're not going to be the best team in this division by any means. I don't see them any higher than potentially 3, but I still have some respect for the Commanders because of the situation. They have a little bit more stability, not in the front office and not with the fans. So with that being said, the third best team in the NFC East is the Washington Commanders with their brand new name and uniform. I really don't care this episode. I'm going to trash a lot of these teams because they talk the most, and there's not a true Super Bowl contender in this division you could argue with a wall. The Commanders got Carson Wentz. That is the big signing that they had because they've been having Taylor Heineke at their quarterback position over the past couple years. And shout out to Taylor Heineke. He did the best for what his capabilities offer, and I think he's a fine backup quarterback, and he's probably guaranteed him a spot on a roster for the next 5 years, I would say, for Taylor Heineke. All respect to him. Carson Wentz, he's not as bad of a quarterback as people want to say. He has a ton of upside. Dan Orlovsky said he was a top 12 quarterback, which is not true. But on top of that, he has a ton of talent, obviously, but I don't think he's that leader. I mean, the first thing you saw out of Colts camp was Matt Ryan comes in. He's a leader. He comes in, he makes sure you are set, you are in the right places. And I think that Carson Wentz you could win with right now in this point of his career. Obviously, the 2018 or 2017 Carson Wentz is long gone. I don't think we're getting that quarterback ever again. But you have a lot better when it comes to the weapons room. I mean, we're talking about guys like Terry McLaurin, a borderline top 10 wide receiver. Antonio Gibson, if he's out of the doghouse, I believe of, Ron Rivera's doghouse, I think he's a great running back if they end up starting him. J.D. McKissick has really found a nice role with Washington. So I think that there's nice pieces. The offensive line definitely took a hit that a lot of people aren't talking about. I mean, losing a guy like Brandon Sheriff is massive. You lost Trent Williams a couple years ago. This offensive line, I don't have high expectations to be this. I think they're going to be in the middle of the pack, and that's not going to be great for Carson Wentz, for a guy that probably needs a really solid offensive line, because he's going to create things. He's going to be either the reason why you win a game or be the reason why you lose. And that's why this team is going to go like 8-9 or 10-7 as probably the highest I could see this team going. I think the defense obviously took a step back last year. I think the secondary is the biggest concern for me when we're talking about the Washington Commanders. The secondary was very much being helped, I believe, in 2021 or 2020 with that front seven. The front seven is bringing back Chase Young. I think Chase Young is a fantastic player with a lot of upside. I think we all understand that. And the defensive line is going to feast. Jonathan Allen is probably one of the best interior defensive linemen in the entire NFL. So they have a lot of good pieces. All 4 of these teams have really nice pieces. But is it going to put them over the top? I don't think so. I think this is the third best talent-wise when it comes to this division. I think the coaching, I want to make this comparison, and I haven't really fleshed it out much. Ron Rivera is Tom Thibodeau if you do an NBA NFL comparison. Let that one sink in and get back to me on what your opinion on that, because I think I'm right on that one. Sorry, I have to switch hands like every 5 minutes. This team is the third best team in the division. I don't think that they could be as low as number 4 and high as number 2. I don't see them winning this division. I don't see Carson Wentz making his big, glorious return to the NFC East and end up winning it. I'd be absolutely shocked. I would be implored to say that Ron Rivera is the greatest coach of all time if he is able to pull that out of his hat. I don't think it will happen, and I think the top 2 teams are the real ones that are going to be fighting for a guaranteed playoff spot, and potentially 2 teams are going to make it into the playoffs just because the NFC is a lot weaker. But if they were put in the AFC, I would only have the division winner making the playoffs, just because a lot of these teams are overrated by their fan base. And I'm talking to you. You can type and get all mad if you want, but the truth is, the recent team to win a Super Bowl was the Eagles, and before that was the Giants. And guess what? I was never alive to see the Cowboys win a Super Bowl, because they're the second place team in this division going into the 2022-2023 NFL season. Cowboys fans, do not get mad at me, because this is the truth. I have CD Lamb on my fantasy football team. I want y'all to ball out. Ezekiel Elliott, still a top 10 running back. Dak Prescott, borderline top 10 quarterback. I could see him easily being number 10. Depends on if you want to put Kyler Murray or Dak Prescott in front of him. That's an argument for another day. Offensive line looks shaky, but I think if they stay healthy, they can look really good. I think the wide receiving core is a little shaky outside of CD Lamb, but it could be really underrated when it comes into the NFL. And Dalton Schultz, I think, is really a guy that I have as a breakout candidate for that offense. The defense, I really am a huge fan of Trayvon Diggs. I think he gets hate for absolutely no reason. Not no reason, but I think he can't do anything right, just like Tua on social media. And Micah Parsons is my favorite for the Defensive Player of the Year pick. I haven't officially made that video yet, but if I were to just do a gut check, I think it's going to be Micah Parsons. Outside of all of those great things, I do not like the head coach. And that's what holds me back for the Cowboys. And I was all in on them last year. I thought they were going to make the Super Bowl. I made that prediction, or I didn't make that prediction because I had the Rams, but I had them going a lot farther. But when they got the matchup with the 49ers, it exposed the root causes with the problem with this team. They're not physical enough when they play teams outside of the NFC East. So they could easily get first place in this division because they're going to be beating up on the Commanders. They're going to beat up on the Giants. And I think they're going to go 1-1 with the Eagles. They beat up in their own division. That's 5 wins right there that they could potentially go and get, because I think they could easily sweep the Commanders and they could easily sweep the Giants. That's 5 easy wins, and then they could crawl to a 10-7 or an 11-6 type of situation, or 12-5. And I need them to actually prove me wrong once for me to put them outside of number 2. You might think, wow, he's not going to talk about the Cowboys a bunch. I'm thinking about making a whole video. I've talked about how Zeke's still a top 10 running back. I've talked about the Cowboys enough. They're the second best team in this division. Talent-wise, I think they have potentially the third best coach in this division because Brian Daboll is unproven. Nick Sirianni clears McCartney right now. So speaking of the Eagles, they're the last team we haven't talked about. They're the first place team in this division. Don't overthink it, guys. Unlike the Cowboys, and like I don't think I got to talk much about the Eagles. It's pretty clear cut what they did this offseason. I am a big Jalen Hurts believer. I've been on this channel to say I think Jalen Hurts is a fantastic quarterback and he's improved every single year of his career. I think he has a lot of upside to be a really solid RPO quarterback. I think he's not a difference maker arm talent wise, but I think he's a guy that could really improve his game and step up into a role which I think he could be a really damn good NFL quarterback. And if not, they go get Kyler Murray next year. I've been on record saying that as well, them and the Dolphins. But I think you get A.J. Brown, I think, is a top 10 wide receiver. That's a great weapon. Devontae Smith is a guy that I was super high off of coming into the draft. Miles Sanders, even though he's in the doghouse for Nick Sirianni for some reason, I think he's a damn good running back. The offensive line is always consistently really good. I think that the defense just gets 10 times better when you go get 2 Georgia Bulldogs. You get Darius Slay, James Bradbury on the corners. I think they have potentially the best secondary in this division. I think they have the best defensive line in this division right there with the Commanders. I think it's arguable, but Fletcher Cox did take a step back, and I think Jonathan Allen and Chase Young are damn near perfect when it comes to playing alongside each other. I think that their offensive line is really solid compared to the other guys in the division. I think their weapons are probably the best. I think you could argue they have the best weapons right now because of A.J. Brown joining the team. And I think Jalen Hurts, when you compare other quarterbacks, he's not better than Dak Prescott, but I think you could argue that he's definitely better than Carson Wentz, in my opinion. I think he's definitely better than Daniel Jones. So you have the second best quarterback in this division. I think running back wise, unless Gibson ends up getting benched or on the special teams, I think Miles Sanders is probably, I don't know, 3 or 4. Saquon, when healthy, I would probably pick Saquon. But like I said, don't overthink this. I mean, they are right at the top in every position group. They have potentially the best coach in this division. I think that they have a really solid schedule moving forward. And I think they can beat a lot of these teams in their own division. And I think that's what's going to put them over the edge. I think this is a dark horse Super Bowl candidate team. I wouldn't bet on it, but I think that if Jalen Hurts at least takes not like a 5-step forward, but at least two to 3 steps forward in his development. And I think that reports have significantly showed that. And I think Nick Sirianni is going to put him in a position to not really make a lot of mistakes. This team's the first place team in the division. So graphics somewhere to the left, right, I don't really care. This is what the NFC East is. You might be asking yourself, why are you so mad, Tegan? You seem a lot more angry this time, because these fan bases make me lose my mind. And if you're a part of one of those fan bases, hit the sub button. Feel free to call me out. Let me know what your thoughts are on this division. At the end of the day, this is sports, guys. I just like poking fun at these teams because they all get riled up. At the end of the day, they're all entertaining to watch. I think the Cowboys are really fun to watch them fumble the bag every single year, especially against the 49ers. I like watching the Commanders not have any fans. I like watching the Giants completely crumble after winning the offseason. They're like Texas. And then I love watching the Eagles, because if there was a team I had to root for, it's probably the Eagles to really continue to push their greatness and finally just consistently win this division, because I've always picked them and it goes south. So if you want to stick around and watch me completely crumble as these divisions and these predictions go, hit the sub button. Thank you so much for watching, and have a wonderful day.